Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Coach the Coach Radio. Brought to you by the Business RadioX Ambassador Program, the no-cost business development strategy for coaches who want to spend more time serving local business clients and less time selling them. Go to brxambassador.com to learn more. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Coach the Coach Radio, and this is going to be a good one. Today we have with us Peter McNally with Global Executive Group. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Glad to be with you, Lee.
Before we get too far into things, tell us a little bit about Global Executive Group. How are you serving folks?
Sure. So we're based in Atlanta. We work with companies of all sizes and frankly across the globe. And what we do is we bring expert operators together to help clients solve challenges where they're either stuck or they need to move faster. And I lead our human capital practice at Global Executive Group.
Now, can you talk a little bit about your transition from being kind of in the traditional workforce and then moving into coaching? What was kind of the impetus for that transition?
Sure. So the first thing I have to say is I practice coaching without a license, right? So I don't have any certifications, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Just that's not who I am and what I'm about. I spent 25 years, if you will, as an operator, marketing, sales, general management roles, including the CEO of a startup. And I've been doing consulting work since 2004. And what happened in 2007, 2008, I connected with an old professor of mine from Babson College, Dr. Joe Weintraub, who had built a leadership and coaching practice. And I was very keenly interested in working with organizations in the human capital and organization development area. And I felt like the coaching area was just crucial. And so that's how I sort of transitioned into that area.
So now, how do you see kind of coaching kind of being implemented in the business world today, where at one time it was kind of exclusive for maybe only the highest level executives or high performers, and now it seems to be kind of being distributed throughout the workforce. Are you seeing that as well? Yeah.
So what I would say is the specific area that I work in and we work at GXG in coaching is really around helping executives develop the coaching skills, their own coaching skills, and those in the organization, right? So we don't do a lot of, if you will, sort of one-on-one coaching, right? You know, I've done some of that, but the real focus and emphasis for us is to develop the coaching skills within the organization.
And then, so you're kind of teaching them how to leverage some of the skills of a coach.
Yeah, exactly. So we call it developmental coaching. And so let's just, we think about business for a second. And this is the first question is, okay, well, why human capital, right? Why does that matter? So over my operating career, I developed a framework where I think about three things that you got to get right in your business. You want to have a high performing business. The first is people, which means you got to have the people with the right skills. They need to have the right tools and a supporting culture to get the people piece broadly right. Then the second is, okay, what are these people here for? To do two things. One is to deliver for customers. And the third is to run the business well, deliver the results. So you've got people, and then you've got customers, and you've got results. And what I've come to believe is that you don't get the people piece right, you have no chance of getting the customer piece right, and you're also not going to run the numbers. So you got a problem, right? If you don't get the people piece right. So that's why that matters. And, so if we then settle on the people area, that pillar, then we think about, okay, how do we accelerate the development of our people? And our view on that is you've got to develop the coaching skills in the organization, again, what we call developmental coaching.
So now, how do you kind of decide what's a better fit for the client to kind of work with them as a coach or to maybe help them with some consulting?
So it really depends on, it's the client really deciding what they need and working with them to understand where they are, what their priorities are, right? And, if there's, we have some organizations where, usually it's either at a functional level, like I was working with T-Mobile, and, the CMO has an organization, and at the time about 150 people, said, I really want to develop the coaching skills of my team. I think that's a real priority. We had done an assessment, and there were a handful of areas that had come out, and this was one of them. She's like, I really want to go after this. I was like, okay, here we go. And that's what we took her team to start with, the leadership team, and then the entire organization through, teaching the developmental coaching skills. And that's how that works. So that, in that case, you need to have a leader that really calls the play and says, I feel like this is a priority, and I think we need this. So that's when we go. If this is not something where, we're going to, if organizations believe in this and believe in the people piece, then, we're excited to work with them in this area. If they're not, then, they're not for us.
Now, when you're working with a client, a new client especially, is the first step kind of some sort of assessment, evaluation, a baseline to see where they're at, so you can determine how you want to go forward, and also how you can measure results against that initial benchmark?
Yeah, and we always customize it. It's a quick assessment. And we make it very easy to do and get done, and it's inexpensive because what we want to do is it's a data gathering exercise, right? And we use that data then to help really tailor the approach to the organization.
And then, so once you do that, then you can begin the coaching?
Yeah, exactly. And it's, or whatever the priority is going to be. So today we're sort of focused on the coaching piece. We will work with organizations in a number of different human capital areas to, again, really identify the continually building the competence and capabilities that are going to be critical to them succeeding going forward. And, today's environment is really challenging, just with the speed and pace of change has been accelerating over the last 20, 30 years, frankly. So, one of the questions that when you think about your organization is, are you learning as fast as the world is changing? And our model is a very flexible, adaptable, agile model, if you will, in working with organizations to bring the right talent, the right expertise, quickly into an organization and help, either build those capabilities or close those knowledge gaps.
But asking questions, that's at the heart of things, right? You have to know what the right questions are.
So in the developmental coaching, there's really three things that, really drive the approach. And one is leading the dialogue with questions, right? Second is coaching to strengths. And then third is coaching up, down, and across the organization, meaning on the last point, it's not just a boss subordinate dynamic, right? But the leading the dialogue with questions is really, really key. So here's a suggestion for listeners to think about this. Try having a 5-minute conversation. You can do it at home with your spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend, or with your kids, or you can then try it in the workplace. But just have a 5-minute conversation with someone, and you're going to give no advice. All you're going to do is ask questions. Okay, you just ask probing questions, and so just no advice. Just try it for 5 minutes.
So what's an example of some questions to get this going?
So in the workplace, you can do it in a situation of like, okay, how was I know you had a work session with the team last week. How did it go? Oh, it went fine. Okay, well, what did you learn? Okay, and okay, so what surprised you? So you're just continuing to ask probing questions, right, around it to get to, the point of, and what you want to do is when you get to the point of action. So what do you think you're going to do? Well, I'm thinking about A, B, and C. Okay. And which one of those? All right. Those all sound like good options. Let me know what you decide. Instead of saying, okay, you need to do B. Right.
But isn't that just kind of the basic difference between a coach and a consultant?
Well, what we generally find is that people have, especially the further you get up in an organization, you're used to making decisions and people coming to you and asking you what to do. Right. And so our counsel is to stop giving advice and use questions to drive the dialogue, and this is all the principle of people owning the solution. What happens when you do this is the ownership for the solution rests with the individual, the coachee, if you will, not the coach, not the boss. If you say, okay, I want you to go do B, okay, right, versus the individual coming to their own conclusion, maybe it takes just a little bit more time, but if they own the decision fully, that's what you want.
Even if it's a decision that you're not kind of 100% sold on?
Absolutely. I will tell you, in my experience, first of all, most decisions are not life or death, right? Number one. Okay. So you've got to be smart about this, right? But most of the time, allowing an individual to get to a decision, which in your eyes might be 80% right, is better than them having to implement something that is your decision and you think is 100% right.
What if it in your mind is 55% right?
Okay, you have to use your judgment. Okay, so this is not you can't apply these rules blindly or these principles blindly. You've got to, and you can express that reservation. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced. How can we figure out how can get me comfortable with this? Okay. I hear where you're coming from, but I'm not positive, right? I'm not sure that this is right. And here's why. So you express your reservation. It doesn't mean you can't be honest and transparent. But in the end, what you're going to do is get the individual to work through it and make the case for what they want to make and make the decision and own the decision. So.
And truly empower the people working for you, not kind of be second guessing them or micromanaging them.
Exactly. As I was doing this coaching work, Google started a research project themselves. And it was called Project Oxygen. And this identified the top 10 behaviors of the company's highest performing managers. It actually started out as a project to prove that we don't need managers. And they actually came back and said, actually, we do. And we figured out the characteristics of ones that people view as great. The number one trait was they're a good coach. So, that was, and again, I'm not saying that you got to sort of look at it, but it was in my experience, it reinforced what I was experiencing when we take people through this work and teach them give them the sort of the coaching skills and work with them, implementing them. About 25% of the people come back and say, this has fundamentally changed how I'm leading and managing. That's a big number in this business.
Now, earlier you mentioned the importance of kind of building on strengths and kind of shoring up weaknesses. Can you talk about where you see the kind of the pros and cons of that? Because some people feel like it's important to kind of first shore up the weaknesses and maybe not necessarily build on the strengths, but just it's more important to kind of focus on the weaknesses rather than the strengths. But it sounds like you're more inclined to focus on the strengths and just shore up the weaknesses. Yeah.
So I do believe in the emphasis on coaching to strengths. And the principle that drives our work in this area is the idea of build on strength and buttress weakness. Okay, build on strength and buttress weakness. So what that means is, so the question I like to ask organizations, and so just think about this for your business and for your listeners, are the goals of the business best served by fully developing the strengths of team members, or will fixing their weaknesses get you to the great performance you're looking for? Right. Okay. Now the truth is it's never an either or, but just think about that for a second. Right. And our perspective is 80% of your focus ought to be building and leveraging the strengths and 20% on weaknesses. And the issue here is, and it took me a while to really grasp how tough a challenge this is we've been taught to do the opposite all of our lives. Okay. So let me illustrate. Your child, or maybe you as a child, or a child comes home with a report card. 4 A's and 1 C. What's the question?
What happened there with that C?
Yeah, exactly. We went right to the problem area. Yeah. Okay. So let me bring this closer to home in the workplace. Think about the development plans for your listeners for either yourself or the team you manage. And when you think about these plans, what are they focused on? Are they focused on people's strengths and really maximizing those strengths and building those strengths? Or are they focused on weaknesses, problem areas? Just be honest with yourself. And I'll tell you the answer. 90% of the time, people will come back and say, you know what? Yeah, it's way too much focused on the weaknesses.
Now, do you think that that's because the manager feels like they can make more of a difference there, and then the strengths are kind of more incremental and maybe more subtle, even though the outcome might be better by keep doubling down on the strengths, but they can see like some sense of improvement by improving a weakness?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I think there's two things going on here. One is what I referenced, which is this is a very deep-seated behavior that we have grown up with as children, as kids, as parents, right? And it's just carried into the workplace. It's a very it's a mindset, and it's what we're used to. So it's what we're used to doing, right? And so this idea of development plans almost inevitably are associated with what are either weaknesses that you need to fix or things that you need to improve, versus focusing. And the other issue is it's easier to figure out what are the pain points, right? Pain points are just something we pay more attention to, right? Versus saying, what are all the things that are really help you be effective, make you be effective, and by the way, could even help you more, right? If you really double down on. So you may have some areas that are sort of inherent strengths, but you're not really leveraging them. You may not have developed them as much, right? So it's double-edged. We're not saying it's either or, but I can tell you in my experience in working with executives in the last 10 years, almost always this is a mind shift that people come back and say, you know what, this has really changed the way I'm looking at my team. It's the way I've changed looking at myself and my organization.
Now, is there kind of research that backs that up? Because my instinct is the same as yours in this regard, that I think that by just kind of focusing on that strength and making it a true superpower, you're differentiating yourselves even more from people. You're getting deep knowledge about a certain kind of skill or a strength of yours. You are kind of leaning into the thing you're probably like more or more interested in, more passionate about, rather than kind of focusing on things that you're not too thrilled about because you're not great at it, and it just seems more work and not as fun as the strengths part, and it could be frustrating and it could be energy depleting. So my instincts are that focusing on your strengths would have better outcomes. Is there research that kind of says that?
So the folks that have been on the leading edge, and they're all about the strengths, right? So you won't hear them so much say what I was voicing, the build on strength, buttress weakness. But the case for strengths is, if you look up the Strength Finder 2.0, and there's a number of resources. It's the Gallup organization is the one that drives that. So if you go there, you'll find the best body of work on, so if you will, the case for strengths. And then you can find plenty of other people there. So there's an HBR, article about, overdoing of strengths, and right. So it's like any of these sort of things, quite often they'll take on a sort of life of their own. And, I personally believe, you should have one sort of weakness area, okay, that you're working on, right? Pick one. Not three, not five, one. It's really going to make a difference. And there is very strong evidence also in time as executives sort of go along in their careers that there may be an area that has been a weakness that they've been able to get away with. And then over time, it catches up with them, right? So you can't ignore the weakness side, right? So again, thus our view, build on strength, buttress weakness.
So now, in the years you've been doing this, can you share a story where you've had maybe the most impact or the most memorable in regards of working with somebody that may have been struggling or maybe at a plateau and you helped them get to a new level?
Well, I've been blessed to work with some just great people over the years. There's a couple sort of stories that come to mind. So one was, we were running a session with executives who had been through our one-day session, and we were doing a follow-up with them a month later, and asking them to share their experiences and what they're dealing with. And one was a director dealing with a real stressful cross-functional challenge, and the CEO had appeared in her office and had a coaching conversation with her, right? And in the end, what he asked her was, okay, what can I do to be helpful in supporting you in this? Is there anything more that I can do? What can I do to help you? By the way, which is a great question from a CEO. Right? How can I be helpful?
Right.
And so she went on and on about, it was just so great. It was so energizing. I appreciated it. It was really helpful. I had one question that I had that he helped clarify and think through, and boom. And so then she was going on and on. I said, Deborah, how long did this conversation take? She said, it was about 2 or 3 minutes. Okay. The biggest pushback we get in the use of questions is, oh, it takes too long. Okay. And that is just not true. Okay. So that's why I like that story, right? It's just, and it's also just it shows the impact, right? It just, so here's somebody who was just over the top about it, and it's such a simple thing.
Now, why do you think that they have kind of maybe an initial hesitancy regarding the time part? What makes them think it takes longer? Yeah.
So the truth is, this is a new skill if you're not used to doing it. So it takes a little bit of time and effort to develop it, right? So it requires some effort. But the truth is, it doesn't, to ask somebody 3, 4, 5 sort of really insightful questions, right, to help them think through something, doesn't take any longer than for someone to come in, explain a situation to you, and then you say, okay, here's what you need to do. It just doesn't. It's just not true.
Right. I know, but why do you think they think it takes longer?
It's because they're not used to doing it. It's a different behavior. And for some people, it's a change. It's a different way of doing it. One of my favorite. This is on my LinkedIn. I've got an article talking about the Kentucky Duke basketball game over 20 years ago when Duke was down by 1 point. It's Christian Leitner, Grant Hill, basket that took them to the Final Four. And I listened to a podcast with Christian and Coach K and Grant talking about what happened during that timeout. Okay. And it was not Coach come over and Coach K says, okay, here's the play, go run it. He turns to Grant Hill and he says, Grant, if we set up Christian just up top of the foul key, can you hit him with his pass? Can you one-time it to him? Christian says, yeah, I can do it. And he turns to Christian. He says, Christian, Grant hits you with his pass. Does that set you up for a good look at the basket? He said, yes, it does. Absolutely. He said, if he throws it, I'll catch it and I'll shoot it. Okay. And their reflection on the conversation was, you were building confidence in us. You were getting us to tell you we could do this, right? And, this is a 1-minute timeout. I find me a more pressure-packed situation. And here's the use of questions to get ownership in the plan.
Right.
Pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, and it shows you what amazing things can happen in a minute.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so that's one of my, and again, I think this is not easy to do. If it was, more people would be doing it, right? But it's a new behavior, and it is something that I just encourage those of you listening to this to explore and to think about. It's got great. It has really. My experience is that it's changed lives, it's changed businesses, it's changed organizations. It has a very powerful impact.
Now, any advice to that leader who would like to maybe experiment with this? Is there a way to take some baby steps in using this developmental coaching practice?
Yeah. So, just start trying this, right? Start using the questions. You don't have to make a big announcement. You don't have to think we're going to start coaching. Just start asking questions and just stop giving advice, right? And just start to see how that feels and start to think about how it impacts your team. Right, and impacts those around you is one. The other thing you can do is just I like this practice. In the military, they have a thing called an after action review, AAR, right? Which is after any sort of major action, they sit down and they ask 3 questions, right? Okay, what was our goal? 1, 2, what did we do well that helped us achieve it? And 3, what did we learn that we can do better? And you can have, if you've got your team together and you just had a call with a client, or you've had an internal meeting, right, or some whatever, maybe sort of end of a project, or even stop just at the end of the meeting before everybody runs out of the room and just say, okay, let's have 2 minutes. Let's have a quick debrief. How do we feel about what we did here today? Okay, all right. What did we do well? What worked? Quick. What can we do better? Pick one thing. Give me one thing we could have done better or should have done better. Okay, we're off. Simple practices.
Now, what is the pain that your prospective client is having right now where your team could help them maybe get to a new level?
Well, one would be, if you just look at the fundamental challenge most organizations are facing, is they need to accelerate the development of their talent. Okay? That most organizations will say we have gaps where we need more talent. We've got to build the skills and capabilities in our organization. And what I want to, quite often, the response to that is we need to go hire people. And I've done my share of recruiting and hiring people, right? And I'm not opposed to that. But what I'm going to tell you is that I believe the answer to that challenge is right in front of you, which is the people are there, and you just need to really start working with them. And if you start deploying these developmental coaching and really start coaching them aggressively and intentionally, you're going to make a big dent in your talent gap challenge. So that's number one, is what I would say is, and again, I think also, again, the world is changing very, very quickly, right? So just being able to sort of access experienced people that have faced the challenges you face to help you think through them is something we believe in strongly.
So if there's someone out there that wants to get a hold of you or somebody on your team, what's the website?
It's gxg.co, gxg.co.
Good stuff. Well, Peter, thank you so much for sharing your story today. You're doing important work, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. We're honored to do it. We appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, this is Lee Cantor. We will see you all next time on Coach the Coach Radio.